We've mercifully reached night 1 of WrestleMania, and I've got 7 winners for you. Next. It sure has been the slowest, windingest road to WrestleMania. That seems like it aged us by a few years. But here we are on the doorstep of WrestleMania Saturday, so let's break down these 7 big matches. But first, let's have a recap, as it's been quite a long time since the Elimination Chamber, and I'd prefer that you just forget about that one, as I went 1 and 3 in my picks. That is easily the worst that I've done in 32 total Betting WWE videos since I started on the BackLash following WrestleMania 40. In fact, it's the first time that I missed 3 winners in a single show, so I'd say if I'm wrong thrice once every 32 events, that's overall a win. And even this one comes with a caveat, as I said this. Unfortunately, I think the results of the tag team title match will probably give us the answer, and I don't get that advantage here in making this pick, but you can. So if Rio loses those tag titles, take Rhea to win this chamber match. So there it is. I explicitly said to take Rhea if she and Io lost the tag titles to the Irresistible Forces, so I want to give myself a win for that. But I guess it just wouldn't be right to do that, to stick with the consistency of this betting podcast over 2 cycles. Some users, Mark Caboli, have platforms on WWE.com where they can just change their already posted article on a Saturday morning to change their pick, but this user didn't think that that was the right thing to do. So I guess I lost this parlay of sorts, as my pick implied a Rio retention, but enough complaining here. Even with that 1 and 3, I'm still 63 and 14 since 2025's BackLash, which is good for 81.82%, and that is still clear of our 80% goal. And it also makes me 125 and 29 lifetime, as in since that 2024 BackLash, which is good for 81.17%. For what it's worth, I was 4 and 2 on night 1 and 5 and 2 on night 2 of WrestleMania 41, with 2 matches being thrown out due to Rey Mysterio getting injured and for Becky Lynch taking Bayley's spot. As always, we need to talk about the history of WrestleMania for betting purposes, and the key thing here is that titles change hands more often at WrestleMania than at the other PLEs. Since WrestleMania 30, there have been 164 total matches, including on the pre-show and the post-show, and now just over 1/2 of the total matches have been for a title, with 83 of them. So if you remove the Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar winner-take-all match, as Reigns both retained and became a new champion in that match, there have been 33 retentions and 49 new champions in those 82 remaining title matches. And that is good for basically a 40% retention rate and for 60% new champions. But WrestleMania 30 is kind of a random place to start, so if we switch to the 2-night WrestleMania era, beginning with WrestleMania 36, and again excluding Reigns versus Lesnar there, we have 20 retentions and 25 new champions in those 45 title matches for 44.44% and 55.56% respectively. And if we really cut it down to the Triple H era, beginning with WrestleMania 39, which I have to admit is a bit of a small sample size with just 3 Manias, but we've had 22 title matches with just 8 retentions and 14 new champions, and that gives us 36.36% and stills, and then 63.64% and news. So, if that trend holds, Triple H is more likely to crown new champions than the prior regime, but again, 3 Manias is probably too early to know that for sure, but last year had a 75% rate of the challengers winning those titles, as 6 of the 8 title matches had new champions. Interestingly, only the 2 primary women's titles had the 2 successful defenses, which were by Tiffany Stratton and Io Sky, who are now both unbelievably off the card completely this year. But that broke a 5-year streak in which at least one of the 2 women's titles changed hands. Likewise, there were 6 new champions and 2 successful defenses on WrestleMania 40 as well, but that one included the World Heavyweight Championship changing hands twice in just over 5 minutes due to Damian Priest's cash-in. As for specific championships, the men's tag titles that have been defended on Raw have changed hands 3 times in a row, noting that in 2 of the 3 years, the Raw and the SmackDown tag titles were merged. But that streak is about to end since neither of the men's tag titles are up for grabs this year. But the WWE, World Heavyweight, and Intercontinental titles have all changed hands in both of these 2 last Manias. Both the men's tag titles on Raw and the WWE title have changed hands the most since WrestleMania 36, with 4 changes each, while the United States title has had the least, with just 1. And of course that excludes both of those women's mid-card titles, as neither of them have appeared on a WrestleMania just yet. But let's keep these in mind because we need to get into the heads of Triple H and the others on the creative team, which based on this year's build is a scary place to be. But let's get to the matches, and we'll have to start with those matches shown on ESPN2, and kicking it off will be the 6-man tag with the Usos and LA Knight at minus 650 versus The Vision and iShowSpeed at plus 375. So why the Usos and Knight? The Usos just lost those tag titles to The Vision less than 3 weeks ago, and it is their first chance to get some payback, and not just on The Vision, but also on Speed, as his involvement played a major role in the outcome. Both Knight and Jimmy Uso took Nux to the dome in that match, so to see the roles reversed and have the good guys get their revenge would be appropriate. Even more appropriate would be LA Knight getting one last taste of victory over The Vision before moving on to anything else, as Knight has fought someone in The Vision in 17 of 30 matches, starting with the Money in the Bank ladder match in June. He also lost his one-on-one match versus Austin Theory 2 weeks ago due to both Paul and Speed's involvement to set up this match. And we only got an iShowSpeed montage video this week, so The Vision got the last laugh on screen, which typically bodes well for the other side. And this is the opening match, so having the good guys win as a feel-good start and to let everyone yeet seems to have a lot of appeal to try to get viewers to hurry up and buy ESPN Unlimited. So why The Vision and iShowSpeed? Celebrities always win, right? Well, I guess not, as we just saw Jelly Roll lose his debut match at SummerSlam, and in a tag match no less. So could this just be that on repeat, but also at WrestleMania? However, excluding Battle Royals based on a What Culture article ranking all of the celebrity matches, I'm seeing the celebs as being undefeated at 13-0. Granted, celebs are almost always good guys, but the one and seemingly only time we had a true heel celebrity, it was the man in this match, Logan Paul, with The Miz beating Rey Mysterio and Dominic Mysterio at WrestleMania 38. So if you exclude the impromptu Snoop Dogg versus The Miz match due to Shane's injury, Logan Paul's debut and Johnny Knoxville versus Sami Zayn were the last 2 celebrity matches, so this is the first of the Triple H era. So we don't really have anything to go by here other than Triple H saying that Jelly Roll was going to win before Jelly insisted otherwise. If we exclude the celeb angle, these 2 members of the Vision are very vulnerable without their much huskier friends in Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed, so they could really use some credibility with a win here. But is a face win just going to get us to a rematch at BackLash? Strangely, Triple H doesn't like to lash back, if you will, so I tend to think everyone here goes their separate ways, with Knight going for singles gold and the Usos being more aligned with a potential champion family member. So the Vision would just try to not fight until forced to do so, which we've seen over and over with the men's tag division, especially on Raw, and I think that would come in the form of some of the losers of the IC title match being their next opponents. But speaking of Breaker, a return here isn't out of the question, as the funniest outcome would be Breaker ending up in the ring with Speed to have him cower as Breaker starts to charge towards him to get a replay of that spear from the 2025 Royal Rumble, only for that spear to then hit Knight instead to end up handing Speed the pinfall win. But I'm not counting on that, since I think Breaker's probably more upset by Seth Rollins' masked men costing him at the Rumble instead. More than anything, this one may be about who will get more people to buy ESPN Unlimited. Regular sports fans who don't watch wrestling but just have ESPN on all the time, or iShowSpeed fans who came in to see what he does here. This is the SportsZu channel, but if you wanted the NBA or NHL playoffs on a Saturday night and you ran into wrestling, I don't think you're gonna buy ESPN Unlimited. But if Speed's 52 million YouTube subscribers, 50 million TikTok subscribers, and 47 million Instagram subscribers see him loving this and even winning this match, just maybe, they'll instantly fall in love as well. After all, LA Knight was on Speed's stream after this match was made official to trash him and his place. So this is ultimately a match with no stakes, so I will just go back to the celebrities win axiom. And that admittedly cost me at SummerSlam, but I will take one of the biggest underdogs on the card as the Vision or the pick, and I'll make this a quarter unit bet. The other free match on ESPN2 is the unsanctioned match with Jacob Fatu at -850 versus Drew McIntyre at +450. So why Fatu? Fatu unbelievably picked up his first win of any sort since August and his first one-on-one win since July. Yeah, I know, that's nearly 9 months ago. How is that even possible? And he has been hovering around the SmackDown main event scene since he returned from his injury at the hands of, well, we still somehow do not officially know who that was. And McIntyre continues to deny it. So perhaps it will be revealed to be either Orton or Zayn. Though Orton makes zero sense since his last appearance of 2025 was on October 3rd, and Zayn makes only slightly more sense since he had just lost the US title to Dragunov on October 17th, about 1 hour before the Fatu injury happened. And he was probably just licking his wounds at that moment instead of taking out his aggression on Fatu for no reason whatsoever. I wouldn't put it past WWE to just completely make that up as a reason to give Fatu a chance at either of those titles, should they win their own matches, of course. However, a better play would just to have McIntyre seemingly have the match won and finally admit to being that attacker as the way to give Fatu a burst of energy to win this match. McIntyre's also long been rumored to be taking a break to film Highlander after WrestleMania, which would clearly give him a good reason to lose here, and even though the latest reports now indicate that he's been filming without missing WWE obligations and that he won't need to miss any time to continue to film, well, WWE probably already decided how they want to proceed before this change happened. Regardless, Fatu's one win is not nearly enough to make him a true title contender, so he simply needs to win this match very badly. But why McIntyre? Because McIntyre always gets screwed, and him losing the title was so unjust that WWE just has to make up for it now by at least giving him this WrestleMania win. It is also possible that this particular matchup is just beginning and will be played out over the next several months. And if that proves to be the case, the heel usually wins the first matchup in a potential trilogy. You'd think an unsanctioned match was so intense that this had to be the end of a feud, but we have just seen McIntyre go from a 3 stages match to just a standard match in the Cody Rhodes feud. So we can't put it past WWE to just keep going here. That said, McIntyre would only be able to go for the WWE title following a win, and now that Orton is a true heel, neither Orton nor Rhodes, whoever wins, is a matchup that makes any sense right now. So seeing these two men destroy each other before Fatu does some incredible mighty moonsault to win the match would be a fantastic way to get people to buy into ESPN Unlimited, and that makes this one make dollars and cents for WWE, so Jacob Fatu is the pick, and this will be a full unit bet. So let's go to ESPN Unlimited for the rest of the matches, and the other non-title match on Saturday is Gunther at -625 versus Seth Rollins at +375. Why Gunther? Gunther has not lost a one-on-one match since SummerSlam, going 7-0, and that includes a couple very minor side notes, like retiring John Cena and then retiring AJ Styles. So what's a career killer to do without a career to kill? Based on this week's Raw, I guess it's to prove a point that Rollins was ducking him, so Rollins didn't have to learn that he's not the best. I mean, it's not a great story for WrestleMania, but hey, considering the rest of the card, that's probably for the best that we're not going any deeper. Anyway, his conversation with Paul Heyman a week earlier is the real meat in my book, as Gunther said that Heyman owes him so much more than a very big thank you. And that will surely come in serving up the Beast for Lesnar's retirement match, whether that be at SummerSlam or at WrestleMania 43. But for now, taking a loss in a match with no real stakes doesn't make any sense to kill the aura of the career killer. So if Breakker is ready to go, it makes more sense for him to get revenge on Rollins here than to get involved with his own group's match. And while a small chance of a DQ loss allegedly exists due to that fact, it's more likely that a Breakker spear just hands Gunther a win instead, which might be unsatisfying for Gunther, but good enough for us. But why Rollins? Well, this is his first match since he injured himself in his Crown Jewel Championship win against Cody Rhodes on October 11th. So that will be just over 6 months since his last match. Under most circumstances, it's best to heat up a guy that's been on the shelf for that long to get a win under his belt. And no doubt a win here would put him right back into championship contention for that title that he never lost. But this is not most times, so one way or another, Rollins, with or without his band of merry masked men, probably needs to go right back to focusing on the vision, especially if Breakker is just about ready to go, and that does not require a win here. This just has to be Gunther, so Gunther is the pick, and this is a full unit bet. The rest of this card are title matches, so get those stats back into your head, and let's start with the Women's Tag Team Championship Fatal 4-Way match. And the odds are Bayley and Lyra Valkyria at -165, the Bella Twins at +115, the champion Irresistible Forces at +500, and Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair at +700. So why Bayley and Lyra? Somehow everything seems to be centering around them right now. Since the Gauntlet match qualifier on March 9th, one or both of these two has had a match in 8 of the 11 total shows, and in each of the last 5. They were ignored by peers for months when they wanted opportunities, but they've just kept showing up and performing, maybe not with a great record, as they are just 1-3 in all tags in 2026, and just 2-8 in all tags since July. But they've craftily won 2 of their last 3 singles matches by cheating in the form of yanking out their opponent's legs from underneath them. And with Bayley being snubbed from WrestleMania last year when Becky Lynch deviously attacked her and stole her spot to team with Lyra instead, this really is a chance to mostly make up for that injustice. That makes this a long time brewing, and that's plenty enough to get them a win here. Why the Bella Twins? Save for a one-off appearance at the 2022 Royal Rumble, did Brie Bella just return for the first time since 2018 to lose here? These two are the truest form of tag team, tied with the Usos at least, but they never got to hold tag titles since they weren't around back in the Divas era. They are already Hall of Famers as a duo despite those lack of titles, which is really an accomplishment. So it seems like there just has to be some sort of obligation in Creative's mind to give them their due with the gold during their run. But that's just the rub. How long will this run last? If they win, they do have to show up to defend the title at some point, so it's not like this is it right here. But that also means they don't have to win it here either, because maybe a little bit of hardship will make that win even more special when they get it here in the next few months. Besides, they haven't been able to compete since Nikki injured her ankle on March 27th, which is certainly a less than ideal way to build toward a title win. But why the Irresistible Forces? After beating Rio for the titles right before the Chamber, they successfully defended the titles 3 times in just over a month, so they certainly have a lot of momentum without having the titles for too long that it feels stale. All that is great, but Lash surprisingly took a one-on-one loss to Bayley on April 6th, with Lyra helping her teammate. But even more surprisingly, these two haven't shown up for the past week to continue to show their dominance. So win or lose, I would think you'd want to at least put them ringside to continue to bully their opponents, so not showing up at all doesn't seem like a good sign for their chances. Should Rio win the title, having Nia and Lash be available as Rhea's first opponents does make a lot of sense. And why Charlexa? Alexa has 13 televised matches in 2026, and Charlotte has 11, which are the most and the second most of all 8 women in this match. So that has to count for something, especially when these two are the only ones showing up to wrestle Bayley and Lyra recently. So while that's good to see, they don't really seem to have much of a story to tell, other than simply wanting to win back those titles. But this feels more like an end, or at least the beginning of the end, than starting a second chapter. They'll probably end up turning on each other soon, which will surely lead to something great, or if Jade wins, these two make the most sense to fight her next. So while the Bellas are very tempting, and if you pick them and they can't compete, you'd at least get your money back, I don't think they're going to win this either way. Right now, this one's all about Bayley and Lyra finally getting the job done and probably using some slightly underhanded tactics to pull it off. So Bayley and Lyra are the pick, and since this is a fatal four-way, it's just a quarter unit bet. Next we have the Women's Intercontinental Championship with Becky Lynch at -550 versus AJ Lee at +325. So why Becky? Becky feels like the bane of my betting existence, as I picked her to win the 2025 Royal Rumble and she didn't even show up. Then I picked her to beat Lyra in their first Intercontinental title match, and she lost. Then I picked her to beat AJ in their first IC title match at Elimination Chamber, and she lost. I just can't help myself but to pretty much always pick Becky, except at WrestlePalooza because she had no chance there. Good thing she didn't lose to Maxine on a PLE, or I'd surely have lost that one as well. So Becky feels like a true agent of chaos for me, and I have to admit I felt alone on an island taking Becky at the Chamber, so I have to say I've never felt more wrong about a pick than I was there. So Becky, you've got me good. But as for this match, real life logistics. That's what I talked about last time as the reason for AJ to win at the Chamber, even though I obviously didn't go with AJ. So real life logistics is exactly why I'm picking Becky this time. Because, as I said that time, AJ would only win the title at the Chamber if she was going to take another break after WrestleMania, and since it seems pretty reasonable that Punk will be in line for a break shortly after Mania as well, depending on how that match goes I guess, it just makes a whole lot of sense for them to both go on hiatus at the same time, and that means they're both dropping their titles. We've had a fun 7 weeks of them both being champions at the same time, but alas, is that really just going to continue indefinitely? Becky has just been taking it on the chin nearly every single time AJ's appeared since she returned back in September, so that is a lot of pent-up manliness in there to let out. So by hook or crook, or some newfound hired gun, Becky's just got to find a way to get that title back. But why AJ? Maybe those good times will just keep rolling. Sometimes you just have a person's number, and this will cement AJ going forward post-Mania. There are so many women who want a chance to wrestle AJ that we could really have everyone line up and get knocked out from now until, say, SummerSlam, which would be truly spectacular. It also makes sense for Becky to finally turn her attention somewhere other than the women's IC title, because what more does Becky have to do to make that title relevant? Because of her, it's been featured on 6 PLEs, including both SummerSlam and now on WrestleMania. AJ certainly has the gravitas to keep this title warm while letting Becky do something else. And lastly, Punk could win, right? But I think AJ's taking her break with her husband while Becky and her husband will be sticking around now that Seth is finally healthy. So real life logistics it is, and Becky is the pick, and this will be a quarter unit bet. Up next is the Women's World Championship, and Stephanie Vaquer is a champion underdog as well at +300, while Liv Morgan is at -500. So why Stephanie? Stephanie just doesn't lose. Her one and only one-on-one loss was on the Raw after WrestleMania 41 to Io Sky, and she wasn't even on the main roster yet. Since then, she is 10-0-2 in one-on-one matches, so she is the definition of having the rocket strapped to her back. Liv has made things awfully personal, calling her mom some very unflattering names. And for some, Liv holding up the title is enough to make you think that she doomed herself. But I just like the reason for her to win is that she's amazing in the ring and you can't take your eyes off of her during her matches. And we should really be itching since she's only had 3 matches this year. But why Liv? Because she is the greatest Royal Rumble winner of all time. And let's hope that that's enough, because she's only had 1 match since winning the Rumble, and that was way back on February 6th. It's hard to give this one a traditional analysis because these two have been forced to do more with less, seemingly only getting about a minute on screen each week on Raw. But those precious minutes have certainly been hard-hitting. Stephanie may not be punished for putting Liv and Roxanne in concussion protocol 2 weeks ago, but it can't help her chances. And you'd think that that would also prevent Roxanne from turning on Liv as well. I can't say the same for Raquel, as someone had to let Stephanie into the clubhouse conveniently right after she left. But I think Raquel would rather turn on Liv after she has the title, as they definitely prove that Raquel can't beat Stephanie and presumably wouldn't be in line to get any other title shots. It probably also doesn't help Stephanie that despite Liv starting the attack this week, Stephanie was the one that got the upper hand and held the ring in their final confrontation, giving us our typical reverse psychology analysis that it's actually a bad thing to draw last blood before the big match. And Liv just got her own music video for her new ring entrance, so yeah, I'd say WWE thinks the world of her to let her do that. And beyond that, Stephanie hasn't had a truly lights out feud since beating Io for the title. Sure, she had 4 title defenses against Raquel, and that is nice, but they mostly just filled the time, until we just filled the time with more of these 1-minute interactions for the last 2 months. Stephanie is amazing, but we just haven't seen enough in these last 6 months to make us think that the WWE should keep it going right now. It is simply just time for a change, so Liv is the pick, and this will be a half unit bet. Well, I guess I just can't put this one off anymore, so the main event of night 1 is the undisputed WWE Championship, with Cody Rhodes as another underdog champion at plus 200 against Pat McAfee. Oh, wait. It says here that it's Randy Orton at minus 300. So why Cody Rhodes? Remember when an insider said before the chamber that they shouldn't change the plans because the plans were good? Well, I think it's safe to say that they did not think that this was the plans that they were thinking of there, and that they changed the plans quite drastically. Man, this is bad. But if you wanted Rhodes to win, this might be the way to do it, no? Rhodes was starting to get some boos in a similar way that Sami Zayn is also starting to get them from the crowd, and he is facing a guy that the fans really want to cheer in Randy Orton. But WWE added in such a foul stench to this match to help Orton that everyone almost has no choice but to cheer for Rhodes. So now him retaining after that dreadful, circuitous route from dropping the title to losing in the chamber and then being gifted another title shot and have Fatu help him out to win that, it doesn't all seem so bad now, does it, after all? Well, such masterminds we have here in WWE, right? Nonetheless, Rhodes is just 5-7-2 since October and is 1-4-1 in PLEs in that time. So could we actually say that he's due to win one for a change? Also replacing a freshly turned Cena and Travis Scott with a freshly turned Orton and a turned up to 11 annoying Pat McAfee, in which the bad guys have gone both to similar kicks to the groin and title shots to the head, is giving some serious deja vu. But that means they just can't run it back exactly the same way as last year to have Rhodes lose in a similar fashion now, can they? But why Orton? While it'd be far more interesting to see Rhodes turn than for Orton to do it again, I have to admit that Orton was doing it perfectly after his chamber win, and it looked like the coronation was on for the long-anticipated title number 15, and then it all came crashing down. But here's the thing, if TKO felt the need to put their finger on the scale by adding their self-appointed guy of Pat McAfee into the feud, regardless of the reason for doing so, well, whether they think Pat's the next Sly Stallone or he's the link to ESPN that drives more people to splurge for ESPN Unlimited, or whatever, they just didn't put that horse in the race to have him lose. No, they see this as a bright light that will make it all work out in the end. And sure, the road's been a little bumpy at first here, but these geniuses are playing the long game compared to us dweebs that can't see the forest through the trees. So we will still get that title number 15, and they get all the money by following those metrics that they believe in, right? Yeah, I guess so. That's a win-win. I just hate this so much, but somebody's got to win, and with Rhodes vandalizing the Thunderdome and stealing his title back on Wednesday, I guess that gives Rhodes the last leg up, which I assumed he'd get on SmackDown, but hey, maybe they don't want to tempt fate yet again, and that was the final salvo. And that's good enough for me to make me think that we're still on track, because McAfee walking into Mania with the title on his shoulder would have made it really hard to pick Orton to win, because there's just no way he should get to hold it and then just hand it to Orton at the end of the match. So I guess the best case scenario is that McAfee gets sent to the crossroads 3 times in a row but that is enough to let Orton recover for one last RKO at the end of a long match. So yes, Randy Orton is still the pick, and this is a quarter unit bet. So here's our quick recap for night one. We've got The Vision and iShowSpeed for a quarter unit, Fatu for a full unit, Gunther for a full unit, Bayley and Lyra Valkyria for a quarter unit, Becky Lynch for a quarter unit, Liv Morgan for a half unit, and Randy Orton for a quarter unit. And always remember to never bet more than you can afford to lose, but this is what we wait all year for, so be sure to enjoy the first 6 matches on this card, and then maybe head to bed early and check the recap in the morning. But before you catch the Z's, be sure to go right on over here to catch the Zoo in this week's Stop the 10 Count, where I complained a lot more about this night one main event. But until next time, which will be just in a few hours for part 2, I am the SportsZu, and this is a podcast that needs a new name.